Hello, everybody, and welcome to Creature Clash, where we talk about everything from D&D to SCP and everything in between. My name's Alex.
I'm Dawn.
I'm Adam.
I'm Trey.
Today, we're going to be talking about mutants, or freaks, as they're also known, but we're just going to call them mutants. So, Trey, you wanted to discuss how certain mutant powers could be translated into D&D, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be cool just to kind of just talk about a few of the different ones and maybe how some of their powers could be translated into different effects that spells have maybe fused into people, making them like mutants.
So which mutant do you want to start off with?
Ooh, well, I feel like a good one, Professor X would be one that most people would know.
Mystique would
and
probably be
his-
pretty
he has,
easy
like,
too.
Mystique, yeah.
We'll do her next.
All right.
Yeah.
So Professor X, for anyone that doesn't know, is the leader of the X-Men, and his powers are all psychic. So he can read minds, but I don't believe that he can do much more than that. His abilities don't extend to like telekinesis or anything like that.
He can control minds as well.
Can he? Because I've never seen him do that.
Yeah,
But-
he in the later series, which the earlier movies, he took a pill that suppressed his powers, but he had the power to enter one's mind and like telekinetically like talk to them. Telepathically, not connect. Yeah, he could talk to them, but then he could also control their actions. He was very, very powerful.
Okay. So translating that into D&D, I suppose would just be like a simple sort of mind reading spell, right?
So you can cast Detect Thoughts at will.
At will, yeah.
Yeah. Come to think of it, wouldn't all these spells have to be at will? Because if they're mutants, then it's just a natural ability.
Yeah.
So
they would be, and it would be instead of having casting it, it would just be like the idea of it being like fused into them somehow. I don't know if that's a thing in D&D or not.
well, like naturally.
Yeah.
So, Adam, what would be the spell Professor X would be casting continuously?
So Detect Thoughts would be sort of that whole mind reading thing. I know there was the talk of he's able to control people's minds. So maybe Suggestion or Charm Person or Command, probably another
Command, yeah.
spell he would probably have at will. And then just being able to speak telepathy is just a thing.
Cool.
Command just allows you to like control another person.
Command basically, it's a very low level spell. So command would just be like you have one word you can say to a person, and they have to follow that command if they save or fail against the spell. So it could be something sort of like just saying stop, and then whatever their action is, they will stop doing it. So
is there a higher level version, like a higher level variety of that?
Suggestion would probably be close to that. If you really want to make him really probably on that more powerful scale, he'd probably have like something like Dominate Person. I need to remind myself the exact spell, but that's literally making the person do whatever you want. Essentially, is what Dominate Person is.
And that in a sense is what he did. That's why Magneto, which is another character, had a metal helmet. He had that because Professor X would control him to the point where he couldn't do anything.
I think that
basically bends him.
Characters for to exist in a D&D sense. I would think that like if you were going to try and play as one of these characters, I think that you would have to be contingent on how you roll your stats at the beginning. So I feel like if you were going to be Professor X, then in order to be that character, you would have to roll like a perfect intelligence score right out the gate.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would be too overpowered.
That makes sense.
And so it would be sort of like a rare thing where each new campaign or each new character that you roll has a small chance of being gifted with these abilities, so that it would be fairer to not only the DM but to the other players as well.
And that's what the new book, the Tasha's Cauldron and everything, has tattoos that kind of give people those powers. Or I guess some more at will stuff.
That's kind of like what's this called? There was that book series about like witches or wizards or whatever that use spells from tattoos, and there was this weird thing where the main character's love interest might have ended up being her brother, but neither of them cared at the time. I forget what it's called. City of Bones or something like that.
No idea.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a little bit.
I
little bit
remember the
after.
premise, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's a little bit after our time. So let's move on to the. We're ready to move on to another mutant.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's try something. Before we do Mystique, let's try something like a lot more challenging. Like let's do Cyclops.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Cyclops, for anyone that doesn't know, has permanent eye beams. So whenever he opens his eyes, lasers just shoot out, and he can't control it at all. So I think trying to translate that into a workable D&D character would be quite difficult, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He wears the headpiece to cover his
Yeah.
eyes so it doesn't happen, but
The visors.
Mhm.
right.
By the way, how can Cyclops see? Because if he's always shooting lasers out of his eyes every time he opens,
I've wondered that too. Does he just see red?
I don't know. I guess somehow it doesn't obstruct his view. I guess I don't know. That's that is an odd concept that he can see when a whole beam of energy is coming out of his eyeballs.
Well, in a Dungeons and Dragons,
You could say
Dungeons and Dragons rule sense, you just have blind sight or true sight.
No, I want this
You could say
D&D
that-
Cyclops to be blind completely. I don't want him to be able to see
Oh,
That could be the downfall of having that ability.
it could.
Yes.
Not that, there
Could he
isn't
have
already
like?
downfalls.
Could he have like more of like echolocation kind of thing?
Like he just goes around and goes, ah!
There's stories of blind people being able to do that, and I don't know.
No, it is true. There are some blind people that can navigate their way through echolocation, but I think it's
It can't be
it's
very
either
effective.
a very hard skill to pick up or it's a very rare trait to have.
But it still can't be
Hmm.
very effective, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be completely aware of everything around you.
True, but I think
No,
it's
no.
another added bonus because then you're not just using your cane to look out for stuff
Yeah.
like Daredevil.
Yeah. I think that's taking it to an extreme, but yeah.
What if Cyclops can only see things that he shoots at? Like, he wants to see a tree, and he ends up opening his eyes, and his laser beams connect to the tree, and then he can see the tree. But
But then how would his visor work?
see, that's a good. I always wondered that. I assume that the visor absorbs the beams somehow.
Or just blocks them, or yeah, that's what I always thought too, but him being able to see does bring up an interesting point.
Well, if you're in the movies, and unfortunately, I think we are going to be going off on the movies for a lot of these characters.
Yeah.
In the movies, he had his sunglasses on when he was in school, and the teacher told him to take them off. So maybe there's something about glass or something about material that can sort of block out the sun,
Just-
prevents his.
Or maybe it was more of a dissipation. Like the laser would go through it and just kind of fade it out. That's far-fetched.
Yes, in this discussion about mutants, that is pretty darn far-fetched there, Trey.
But it can't be about blocking out the sun, because
guess.
if he like opens his eyes and looks at the ceiling, the lasers will shoot through the ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
It's
He
just
can
a
be
beam of
inside
light
and they
that
still
comes out of
work.
his eyeball. It's just at all times a beam of light is coming out of his eyeballs, like a beam of pure energy, destructive. that.
Hey guys. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what prevents Cyclops' eye beams from shooting out and being reflected back or something like that.
I guess
Although
the
how
only
awful
thing.
would it be if his eye beams were still shooting, even though his eyes were closed, so he doesn't have any eyelids, like, at all. That'd be awful.
I'm kind of assuming
be
that
terrible.
his lasers don't hurt him, I guess, in that sense.
Is there any instance where they do hurt him, like where he was head pushed down to look at himself and cut at all? I don't know.
I don't know.
I think his lasers, if they're reflected back at him, can definitely hurt him. I know if they're reflected back at him, they can hurt him. But I don't know if he has the ability to not hurt himself. I don't think he does, because if he had that ability, then he probably wouldn't want to wear sunglasses all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he have a brother that could shoot stuff out of his chest?
Yeah, but he died. He had a brother
Mm.
who died, and then came back, and then
Yeah.
died, and then came back, as is tradition with
Oh.
most characters.
How about are we good? Are we good on Cyclops?
Well, we haven't blocked him out yet for D&D. So, Adam, what
You're right.
would his ability be in a D&D sense?
Oh, I'm not entirely sure how a player character can be pulled off in that sense.
Well, I think more of this as things we would encounter.
All right.
Like if you a big bad or something.
This is things that can be encountered. Perhaps a beholder had a dream that he sort of became a humanoid, and so his body transformed into a humanoid-esque person with still being able to have like the eye rays of a beholder is still able to have. So that is possibly a scenario of some sort of encounter that is Cyclops-like, maybe.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of would have been Beholder's eyes with the rays that come out of them.
Maybe it would be easier just to focus on his visor then, and then like in the D&D sense that it's a magical item rather than it being the person.
Instead of the visor making the beams instead of the person.
Yeah.
So are the beams coming out of the beholder, are those are specific spells?
They have spell-like properties, but they are not directly spells. They are just something that a beholder inherits.
Okay.
With the DNA of a beholder and you splice it into a human, and would the human have that ability?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I guess possibly. I mean, you could play that whole what if game. I mean, it just all depends on who's running the game, I guess.
Well, here's my thing. Is it possible to go from a beholder to a human? Something that's not a beholder mates up with a beholder, then their offspring mates with something else, and then so forth and so on, and eventually it becomes a human.
It's hard to answer that question because beholders are creatures that are otherworldly. Like their anatomy isn't really fully explained on like how they reproduce, if they at all. I just know that other beholders exist because a beholder sleeps and has a dream of another beholder, and that beholder becomes reality.
So what if there was a beholder that fell asleep and then dreamed of a human-like beholder, and that thing became a reality?
That's what Adam.
Then yes, that is entirely possible.
Yeah, I think that's how you were explaining it.
Yep.
I was a little confused on the sleep thing, so now I understand what you were getting at.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I should have explained that. So that's my apologies for everybody. But
No,
that
you're
is.
good.
Hey, Wizards of the Coast, you need to come out with a book explaining how all these creatures reproduce, all right? Not about the graphic details about any of it,
what D&D
but it's important to the world building to know.
My only theory on how beholders became a thing is that there was another otherworldly creature that had the same dream power, I apologize, that created the beholder from said dream, and that is how beholders became a thing. That is like the only theory that I can think of how beholders exist.
So getting back to the whole idea of the visor being the item that creates the beam in D&D, I think that would be, I mean, we couldn't make it like a continuous beam because it would have to be something that would be activated and deactivated because otherwise it would be too powerful.
Well, he's able to control his visor.
Right. So what kind of damage would it do? I think it would do fire damage, if I'm being honest.
Or radiant. Well,
Or radiant, or both. Radiant fire.
or it could have an initial radiant and then like a lasting fire if whatever it hits is flammable, like, you know what I mean, like hitting a cart or something.
Are we all
fire? Yeah.
Everything's flammable if you try hard enough, right? How much damage do you think it would do per attack? Because I think that this would have to be like a super rare item. So I would imagine that its attack would be pretty decently high. I'm thinking like 2d6 or something like that.
Or it could be better and have charges.
Ooh,
It could, yeah.
that would be good. Like how?
Like only use it a certain number of times per day. Recharges at dawn, like gets one charge at dawn every day.
Or you could do like, I don't know, like have like 10 charges. That way it's more usable throughout the day.
I was thinking
but
around 10 or 5 charges would be a good idea.
You could have like 10 charges with the 2d6, and then, or do any items like recharge 1d6 or something like that throughout D&D, or is
Yeah, there's items like that exist.
Yeah, so like it could recharge maybe 1d4 per day per long rest.
Yeah, that sounds like a good compromise. So it would do 2d6 damage with 10 charges initially, and then at the end of a long rest, you would roll a d4 to determine how many charges it got back. So like 10 at maximum, basically. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty useful compromise. All right, let's move on to another comic book character, Batman. No, let's do Spider-Man,
Okay.
but let's
So
do the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man where he can shoot webs from his body.
I like that. Yes,
Yep.
because otherwise it's just items doing
Otherwise,
that
it
for
would
you.
just be an artificer that's super strong and super athletic.
So
Actually, Adam, question: if I could figure out how to make the Spider-Man web shooters, could I make the webs in D&D as well?
in theory, you can. There is literally a spell called Web or Spider Web or something like that, and it could do exactly what you're looking for.
Ooh. No, I'm
But are
talking
you looking more of
constant
like
web shooters.
finding components to make? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Are
like
you looking for?
components for the web shooters. But yeah, let's talk about Spider-Man. So are there any like spider humanoid-esque creatures in D&D?
Spider humanoids, not that I can think of off the
But what
top
about
of
the?
my head, but I was gonna say like humanoids mixed with spiders as monstrosities. Yes, there are lots.
That's what it would be.
There's
It would be a spider monstrosity.
There's like the Drider. Is
Yeah,
where it's
Drider, the
like
most
the
common
top
one. I
half.
mean, yeah, it's literally
Yeah,
a
top
dark
half.
elf, and
Hmm.
talk about horrifying your entire neighborhood as you're walking through the street.
Friendly neighborhood Drider.
There's nothing friendly
So I guess
about
there's nothing friendly about that.
no.
So I guess we could try to come up with something that I guess this would be as far as more infused spells, like you said,
Either
web.
these spells or perhaps again we would go with magical items as well.
Could, yeah.
Because what does web do in D&D?
You essentially make a web that can encase a space up to like 50 feet long, or you essentially take up the equivalent tiles of 50 feet. So what is that? Is that 10 tiles? So you can cover like 10 tiles with spider webs, if I'm remembering all this correctly. And I know that there's literally a wand that exists called like Wand of Webs. Although a Spider-Man wielding a wand wouldn't really look too cool.
Tape
So
it to his arm.
tape it to his arm.
Yep.
It's up his
Just
sleeve,
get the
just
duct
the
tape
tip
and
comes
just
out.
wrap it around your wrist. I'm Spider-Man. See,
Didn't
but in
those-
my mind, what I'm thinking of when I think of a Spider-Man-esque character in D&D is somebody that mainly uses webs for physical damage as well as movement, not just an area of effect.
I guess you could say whatever the Spider-Man is, it could have. Is it called Spider Crawl? Is that what? Or Wall Walker? I can't remember.
Or
Like,
Spider
what
Climb.
sort of Spider Climb? Yeah.
What about spider sense? How would that translate?
Be tingly. I know that.
You'd
Um,
you would definitely be at least proficient with perception. You'd probably have the alert feat, which
okay.
gives you a +5 on your passive perception, and you can't be surprised.
But Adam, would you really want to live in a world where you can't be surprised? Imagine if you got a PS5 for Christmas, but because you couldn't be surprised, nobody could tell how happy you were.
It's
That's right. Don't fight me on this.
I don't know if it'd be more so like, yeah, okay, I don't know. Like, I feel like you can still be genuinely surprised of something than what the feat itself is. It's like,
yeah, the whole not being able to be surprised is about encounters, not necessarily, oh, you got me this for Christmas.
yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out how to say that.
So basically, so the ability to climb stuff and spider sense can essentially already exist in D&D, but I still want to be able to use webs for movement instead of necessarily an area of effect. So I think in order to translate that into D&D, it would probably have to come from a magical item where it would sort of be like the web spell, except it would only go in a straight line, and whatever it stuck to would pull you to it.
Like a natural grappling hook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and of course, it would also have to have charges as well.
Well, if you're going off of Tobey Maguire Spider-Man,
Then
I
he would
guess,
already have
yeah.
the natural
With-
latent ability. But
Yeah, with
Same time.
with it being a magical item, it would be the other two renditions.
yeah, I know. But at the same time, I was only going to go with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man if there was already a creature that had something like that inherently, but there doesn't seem to be
Touche.
any creature. So I think that we would need to turn it into more of a magical item. So I think it would probably be like, chance to hit, chance to not hit, like most things are, and it would just pull you to whatever you're trying to attach to. Probably have like a range of maybe 50 feet or so.
How about instead of charges, it could be like a chance that it doesn't work again. Like there's things for rolling, like for certain legendary actions where recharged on a 5 or 6, it could be like it doesn't read, like it runs out on a low roll, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, so like you would have
Because I
to
feel like if
recharge it manually then? Like it would be like a web fluid type thing where you would have to find the fuel for it and recharge it manually?
I guess that, or because like if you're wanting to use it for moving around, kind of like Spider-Man does, you wouldn't want that quick you're out of uses thing, unless it inherently has like 60 charges or something like that.
Probably not that many.
Like,
I would
but
probably
you
go
see what I mean? Like with the full charges,
Yeah,
you would,
yeah, I
you
see
would
what
want
you
more
mean.
more reliable.
I just have to go on the record and correct myself. I was completely wrong about the space it occupies, the spell web. It's a 20-foot cube from
Okay.
a point for a duration, not 50 feet that I said. I was completely wrong. I apologize to all the other D&D people that are listening.
Adam, I can't believe you let our listeners down like that. I'm so sorry.
I know.
3 of our listeners that we know of.
I know. How dare I?
Okay, let's do one that we're all familiar with. Deadpool with his regeneration ability. Now, how would you nerf that in D&D while still keeping true to the character itself?
We're talking Deadpool and not Weapon 11.
No, we're talking Deadpool,
He's a vampire.
Yeah, he's a vampire.
He has a full body suit and everything. He's hiding from the sun. Vampires regen.
True, I guess, but Deadpool isn't.
So it could have most of the aspects.
That's just how I'm saying we should nerf it.
Or he
Really,
literally,
Deadpool's afraid of his emotional intimacy.
his regeneration could be something as to like 1 hit point a round. So it exists, but it's slow.
Yeah, because it's a slow. Now, as far as the whole basically not dying thing, how would we do that in a D&D sense?
He's a vampire.
Don, you can't just wish away all your problems by saying it's a vampire, okay?
Well, there's like very limited ways to kill vampires. He's a vampire.
Yeah. So what twist could we put on it that would, unless you just want to say he's a vampire?
Maybe,
But like,
maybe he's a vampire. Maybe he's a werepire, minus the werewolf transformation.
What? So a vampire.
No,
oh,
he's got the benefits of the werewolfism in the sense that he can go out in the sun, but he doesn't transform into a werewolf at night.
Okay.
Well, it could be something as he gets killed off while he's unconscious, like he has to fail those 3 death saving throws. Or maybe you need to dispose of the body in a pool of acid and just dissolve it all. I don't know.
Is acid something easy to come by in D&D? I
If
don't
you
think I've
find
ever
a,
encountered it in any games I've played.
find a black dragon, it is very easy to come by.
Okay, well, how easy is it to find Black Dragon, Adam?
It depends if you're looking for it actively or not. But black dragons aren't something common.
Not like genies, right?
Their rarities are both unique. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, yeah, I like the idea of him basically having the stats of a vampire, but with the added effect of healing, like 1 or 2 hit points every round. Maybe we should go with 5.
yeah.
Just to make it more unfair. Because Deadpool's kind of an unfair character if you think about it. So why not just make it go 5?
I mean, a vampire monster alone heals 20 around, unless you have him in rushing water or was hit by sunlight.
Okay, then let's do 20.
Mhm.
Even better.
Let's just crank it up.
Yep. How about 100 around?
Because like if you think if you think of Deadpool as a character in like Marvel, he's a pretty like world breaking, just rule breaking person in general. So I mean, it makes sense that it would be a game breaking thing. Again, this probably would definitely not be a playable character, but because holy cow,
Maybe with
be
Deadpool
insane.
as a thing to fight, there would be limb damage. So you could chop off his legs and his arms to make it easier to kill him.
Yeah, because regeneration. So
Right.
like it'd be more of a specific. You chopped off his arm. Now he's slower, but he's still trucking.
If I'm remembering this
Yeah,
correctly, I'm
yeah.
pretty sure there's a variant stat block for trolls in the monster manual that have limb damage on them.
Yeah,
If
so
he's
you
a
would apply
troll.
Okay.
you would apply that to a vampire character, and then you would have Deadpool basically.
So we're saying he's a half troll vampire.
Yes,
I mean, he
Trey.
kind of looks like a troll.
Trey. We're so sorry for
What?
anyone that is also affected by the same facial deformities as Deadpool is have. Well, you know that here at Creature Clash, we respect all kinds of people, no matter what they look like or how they react. We have now kicked
I
Trey out of
formally
the podcast
apologize.
officially.
No,
It's so insensitive.
I formally apologize. Anyhow,
Okay, guys. Now let's. Okay, so we've invented the Trampire with the Deadpool. So now let's talk about the ultimate superhero, Batman.
So he has the noble background. So he has a lot of money, or a guild artisan. So he has a lot of money, and he just buys all his stuff. And there it is, Batman.
basically, he's got some good.
Make
He's
some
got
of
some
his
real
stuff.
good weapons. He's got
Butler's
a
an
tricked out
artificer.
Skyship.
Yes. That would be so
All
cool.
right, yeah.
Campaigns with like weird stuff like this. Actually, now that so we've talked about already existing mutants and translating them into D&D. So guys, if you could make a D&D mutant, your own concoction, what would it be and how would it possibly exist?
I like that question. One that I was not prepared for.
Yeah, I was about to say we would have liked to have time for that one.
No, on the spot. On the fly.
All right, you go first, Alex.
Okay, if I were to have a D&D mutant of my own concoction, then I think I would want it to be sort of a combination between Cyclops and Angel from, I think his name is Angel or Archangel from Marvel as well. So it would have the beam attacks of Cyclops, but with the added effect of being able to fly. And I think the way you would get that is that first you would have a beholder dream up some kind of humanoid, beholder-esque thing. So you would have this humanoid beholder that had the already beam attack genetics within it, and then probably would have to have some kind of relationship with either an Aarakocra or an actual angel itself in order to get the wing effects.
Okay.
So I think that would be entirely possible if we're saying that beholders can also dream up humanoid beholders. And I think they should be able to. I think that'd be a cool little thing that they could do. Maybe like a rare occurrence, but still something that could possibly happen.
Yeah, I mean, beholders dreaming, basically whatever they dream comes reality, so I don't see that being a limitation.
Exactly. So it would be a humanoid beholder falls in love with an Aarakocra, and then their offspring would have the beam attacks of a beholder, and with the added bonus movement of flight from the Aarakocra. Aarakocra. It's Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosa. So, any interesting combinations that they would come up with for their D&D mutant?
I would want something along the lines of weather manipulation, kind of like that Storm has, but also I don't know the name of the mutant itself, but plant manipulation,
like poison ivy.
Kind of like that. Yeah. But yeah, to be able to like mimic or not mimic, manipulate nature all around.
So that'd be
Whether
kind
it be
of like a druid, maybe like a wood nymph, mixed with like some kind of. I don't know if there are anything like storm nymphs or anything like that. Are there anything in D&D that can control the weather like that?
Druids, storm giants, depending on the color of the dragon, they have regional effects on the weather.
Okay. So storm giants, and then there's anything that can control plants like poison ivy.
Druids, possibly dryads. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so hypothetically, let's say that there was a storm giant, but he had dwarfism, so he was a really tiny storm giant, and I guess that would essentially amount to an almost regular sized storm giant, sort of like Hagrid from Harry Potter, but like
yeah. Is
Yeah.
there a product of elementals? Like what comes from elementals?
Not directly from books, but there can definitely be a product left behind.
That could be a a background for the person. Like it's a product of like many elementals coming together to form one being, and then it's just like a descendant from that.
it would be like a combination of all different kinds of elementals, essentially giving their energy to one being.
Yeah, and then to like make it more of like a understandable, like a person playing it, it would be like a descendant from that.
I can see that. It could be like a descendant, like it could be like a latent DNA, like a latent strand of DNA that is very rare within a certain tribe of druids, and then
Yeah,
like maybe one person is born with it every couple of 100,000 years or something like that. So
Yep.
it would be like a really rare occurrence. I could see that.
I think that'd be really really cool to be able to do.
Yeah. I think that would be interesting. It might be a little overpowered, but I think that there would be ways to nerf it so it's not too.
Yeah, and that's what like being like so far of a descendant, it could be nerfed in a way in that sense.
Right,
Like
because
you don't have super control of it, but like
right, like it's not like you have
me.
cantrips to do this type of stuff. It would definitely be charges.
Yeah,
But it would be like an early start essentially for a player.
Yeah. Yep.
Like sort of like a jump ahead in terms of spells. So that'd be interesting. Anyone else? Dawn? Adam?
Let's see. I guess there's a couple characters that can like teleport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
like
who's the blue
there's-
person?
Nightcrawler.
Yes,
Oh
Nightcrawler.
yeah. And there's Blink also does some kind of teleporting.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Nightcrawler, he actually ends up in a different dimension and travels through that dimension and ends up back in our plane.
Which there's a
Oh.
spell for that. I think it's
Right.
literally called Blink.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
But it should be a cantrip, like more DNA based, essentially. Like not something that you would have to cast, but something that would be inherent within your character.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Don. Is that all you got? You don't want any other crazy combinations?
You can go off of that with it, because like things can go wrong with doing that, right?
But a lot of things can go wrong with teleporting and plane shifting.
Yeah. So like you should have the off chance of that, but not like a very slim chance, but it'd always be something
Are there
like with
any-
power.
Are there any creatures that have blink that are like naturally perfect at it, essentially?
I know blink dogs. I don't know if naturally perfect is the word to use it, but it's something they can naturally do is blink.
So I would imagine that this character that Don has come up with, if they were to have the ability of blink, maybe a way to make it more mutant-ish would be just to have it be sort of a naturally perfect blink, or one that would be incredibly rare to mess up with.
You could combine it with Mystique too.
So it'd be like a transformation.
Mm,
Yeah, like you could blink somewhere and be somebody else.
Ooh,
yeah.
that'd be a good idea for a thief character.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Which we didn't mention it, but Mystique takes 5 seconds. She's a doppelganger.
It's
So
like
it'd be a blinking
see
doppelganger
her
or a blinking changeling.
Yeah.
yeah.
That'd be interesting.
That would
You
be
could have a lot of fun with
that
that.
would be really interesting.
You could overthrow kingdoms with that ability if you could blink into a king's chambers and then kill him and take over.
What is
Yeah.
it with you
Mystique.
and D&D? You're always trying to take over.
Usurp.
Because what's more, because I think, to me, and this is a bit off topic, and we'll get to Adam after this, but to me, I think the entire point of D&D is to get as rich as possible, and also I just like to see the DM's reactions when I try to take over a kingdom. Because it's fun to watch them be like, what? Like, no, I'm not going to do any of the quests in town. I'm just going to try and kill the king, take over the kingdom, or try to take over the bank and get all the money in the bank.
Or
Stuff
buy
like that, just to expedite the process of not having to worry about gold or money. So that's why I try to take things over.
because you think the point of D&D is having money and power.
I mean, if you could play an entire campaign where you robbed a bank and you didn't need to worry about your gold expenditure ever again, imagine how fast that D&D campaign would go. You'd basically be breaking the game, because then it would be like, I want to buy this legendary weapon and this legendary armor, and I want to buy all these potions. I mean, you would basically be breaking the game early on. So, in my opinion, if you can rob a bank or take over a kingdom as early as you can in D&D, and never have to worry about money again, you've now taken the game in a completely different direction that the DM is going to have to try and figure out how to nerf.
Well, I think maybe the nerf would be by doing these things, you're putting a huge target on your back and you're making even more enemies. So something more powerful would come after you sooner than it normally would in a campaign.
Then I would just hire like an army of bounty hunters.
Unless you're already dead.
Unless you're already dead, true. But I mean, you know, I feel like it would basically become DM hunts the player.
I've heard of some DMs do something like that. Like every time something like the party does something just abnormally insane for a party to do, they roll for a counter and just like up the risk for them.
Yeah, but well, because Adam's the only DM that I've ever played with, and Adam typically doesn't like to just throw in random bullshit to hurt the players. So I just think it would be interesting.
That, like, as far as like people are starting to hear about this group who's killed 2 kings, like people hear about that kind of stuff.
Right, true, I guess. But at the same time, my whole thing would be like, if you like, let's say you started a fresh campaign, and somehow through some miracle, your character was able to successfully rob this bank and keep all this gold, and then the DM would just have to try and figure out a way to either get the gold back, or we just have to start upping the encounters early on. I just think it would be interesting, but that's probably just me. So anyway, you know, back to topic. Adam, what would your D&D mutant be?
Honestly, I have not a clue. I am very unknowledgeable about the X-Men scene. The only X-Men I know of is Deadpool. So
okay. So if you were to make a character with inherent powers, what would that character be able to do?
Right, like if your character was able to have any kind of superpower, what would it be, and then how would it get to be like that?
The superhero stuff isn't really Adam's thing.
Yeah.
And keeping all the long pauses for this moment right here in particular in. So everybody for Adam to answer.
Oh.
No, just like if you could have any power that a monster in D&D has that you could like do without breaking the game, what would you like? Have you ever thought about that? Like,
no, I've never thought about that. All right, here's an idea.
Oh.
Adam's because he doesn't want to break the game. He wants to play the game as it is, step by step, rule by rule. He would never try to break.
Nothing wrong with that.
So there's definitely this story definitely exists, right? But essentially, you have this dude who's got essentially alchemy touch. So you know he touches something, boom, gold. But what if he like can turn it into something else? You know what I mean? So like he can break economies. He turns gold into copper or something less value, stone, or...
I think you would really like the show Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
It's that.
Oh.
It's one of those animes we talk about sometimes.
Really good show.
But that would be interesting if you had Alchemist Touch and then you could turn things into other things. But I feel like if you were to do that, if you were to have like if it was to be more than just turning something into gold and it was turning anything into anything else, then I think that your character or you as a player would have to have specific knowledge of how you could turn something like lead into something like gold. Like you would have to be able to work out the formula for turning lead into gold.
Like the chemistry behind it?
Yeah, like there would have to be some chemistry behind it.
I mean, arguably alchemy is science, so it'd have to be like an alchemist or something.
Right. So with that in mind, I guess it would be possible. I mean, that would be an interesting character to either encounter or play, where you could turn anything into gold, or you could turn gold into something else, or you could turn a structure, like you could turn a castle into mud, or you could turn a forest into like a desert, something like that.
Well, you're going like big scale there, not just something individual that you're touching.
No, I'm thinking big, man. I think that'd be pretty cool, actually. It would definitely have to be like
I do think
like I would think that it would have to be a creature that you would encounter. I don't know necessarily if that's something that a DM would allow a player to try and play without having some severe restrictions on it, though.
Not in a serious game.
And that could also be like in the works of a new class, even like at the beginning you can't do like insane transformations with the alchemy, but like you can do some things and you hone your skills to do great things by the end.
It's a good point, Trey. That we could develop a new class like that, a new alchemist.
I keep going back to the show, but that was a really, really good show, and I love the premise of what Adam brought up, being able to like the alchemic touch. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. So we could definitely develop like a sort of alchemy class like that. But that would be, I feel like that would be for another podcast, though.
Oh, most definitely.
Most definitely. And I think if we're all good on that, I think if we all got what we want to say. Well, thank you everybody for listening to this episode of Creature Clash. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll hear you all again next time.